Thank you, Murat, for the invitation. All right, so without taking too much time, I'm going to share my screen so we can start this session. You can see my screen in a bit. Let me just do a screen share from here. Just yeah, yeah, cool. All right. So once again, you're welcome to this session. You're welcome to the session on intersection of SQL. Today we're taking a look at Postgres because there are several SQL database out there, and we'll be taking a look at how we can merge these with LLMs currently right now in terms of Invoke. All right. So once again, my name is Tuladi Adinsoye, and I'm an engineer and consultant. I do a bit of consulting in the data space. Yeah, I'm happy to do this as well. So cool. So in today's session, the main objective is I'm going to ensure that I break the concept of text and LLM in terms of how your text data, your natural data, how it syncs together with with a large language model. We'll take a look at previous approaches to retrieve time permit results. We'll take a look at how LLMs have impact in the DB query. We'll do a bit of a demo session, and also we'll take a look at using a wrapper. That's the Vana wrapper. I'm going to walk you through how you can get your API key and get to do some queries. All right, on this. All right, cool. So now, yeah. So as a bit of introduction, in terms of introducing the concept of text to SQL. Now, the concept of using your native natural language in terms of database has become more prominent. This is due to emergence of large language models. Now, take for example, you work in sales department, or perhaps you work in marketing department, and you want to find out information regarding what was our last outcomes, in terms of our operations. What was the last outcome like? In terms of how do we perform last month, or we have new leads, we want to reach out to a new audience, and you have your data, right? Now, the first thing you want to do is that you need an analyst to query your database for you. You want to find out, you want to investigate, carry out queries, right? Write queries to get more insight. But this time around, we're looking at the concept of how can we use our natural language. I speak English, I speak Chinese, or I speak French, and I can get to query my database, ask it in my own native language, and understand my syntax, in that regard. So that's the concept of what is happening here. All right. Now, as you can see on this screen, now the image you can see here is the image of a person, right? Is the image of the user. Now the user here fills in an input, to perform a particular query, and this query passes on to the model. For example, you can have series of models. In the next couple of slides, I'll talk about model selection in terms of selecting an appropriate model to use, depending on your use case scenario. And then you also along the line, you also have your Postgres database there, and then you have your output data. Now, just to clarify, in terms of when it comes to productionizing these particular systems, there are different routes you can take, right? This is just basically a simple architectural diagram just to throw more light on this concept of natural language queries into our Postgres database to finding our results. Yeah. So let's take a look at building a textual system. What exactly does it really mean, right? In terms of building out the system. Now, the first thing you want to do, in terms of you want to look at the model selection. For example, if you're looking at deploying this kind of solution in-house, either bespoke or custom, you want to look at the model selection, and there are a variety of factors you want to consider before you select your model. For example, you have looking at the cost of the model. You're looking at the speed, you're looking at the quality, you're looking at the model size, you're looking at the training data, and you're looking at the application. So you need to factor these considerations when you're selecting your model for these kind of scenarios. And right now we have a variety of those. Majorly, I'll categorize them into the open source and the closed source, as we are familiar with OpenAI, with the GPT-4 models, and a couple of other models who are available out there for us. Cool. So now the next thing is you want to define your approach. Now, one of the approaches I recommend to use in this particular scenario is retrieval augmented generation. In the sense that, in the sense that, in the sense that you already have your own data, have your own data systems that understands your own context, right? So you want to be the knowledge base. You want to be the knowledge base based on what you currently have. Now, using RAG to take on this approach is very, very recommended to do. Cool. Now, the next thing you also want to look at is also look at the data selection, right? Now, like in my initial illustration, I gave two scenarios. The first one is, for example, if you work in sales and perhaps you work in marketing. Now, these are two different areas, although they are closely related. You also want to be able to, you also want to understand your data, where it's coming from, and in terms of you want to understand the table, you understand the columns, because you need to ask yourself core questions in that particular area. What particular data are we using? What are the meta attributes? What are the columns? What are the features, and all of that? You need to consider this before you begin your operation. Yeah. So this other aspect is here you get to customize the solution to your business environment, um, in the sense that what would basically happen for a company, for a fintech vertical might not necessarily happen in different industry. So you also want to be able to streamline these operations and this solution, the text to SQL system, into your own business environment. And the next is you want to get feedback, right? Feedbacks are very, very critical when building LLM solutions. You want to get feedbacks, you want to carry out evaluations on the systems. You also want to be able to know, in terms of the human interactions. This particular model, how good is it? In the demo we're going to be doing today, you're going to see how the LLMs are not perfect actually. Right now they're not perfect, right? And so you want to be able to iterate on the systems, right? So the feedback here, the feedback mechanisms helps for iterations on the service, as the case might be. Yeah. So one of the fundamentals that we need to look at here is the prerequisite, right? Like what exactly I'm going to be needing in this particular session. So I'm just going to be walking you through what would it take you to build a simple text to SQL system. You want to query. You have your database right now on Postgres. You want to query your database using natural language. What exactly do you need, right? We First of all, you need your Postgres database system as a PG admin. You need your tables, you need your sample data, for example, in your database. You also need access to LLM. It could be open source, it could be closed. In this particular demo, I'm going to be using OpenAI, and I'm going to be using what we call Vana. Vana is basically a wrapper, is a wrapper tool set that I'm going to be introducing you to, and you get to see how it works. Then you also need a vector store. Basically, you want to store the knowledge, right? You want to store, once you're through in terms of building your knowledge base, you need to store it in a vector store. All right. So cool. Uh, Before we go to our demo, let me just throw some light on in terms of the challenges currently faced in text to SQL system. Um, Now, one of the challenges you will likely encounter is first of all, is human language is inherently ambiguous and in terms of context dependent. Currently, right now, there's a bit of gap, right, in terms of translating the human language into SQL, right, into a language. I mean, a structured query language syntax, right? So you might find out that in your operations, a bit of gap. It's not an all perfect system, but along the line you can carry out iterations to improve on the overall performance of the product, right? The next thing you also want to do is that you want to also the next challenges rather that you might also face is you might need to build text to SQL features for every database. I think it's something I basically experienced recently. For example, when you're building your knowledge base, right, you're going to build it on on an existing data, and sometimes when you want to carry out some reshuffling and all of that, you might need to retrain. You need to basically retrain the model, or you need to basically retrain the model, right? And in this along the line, you might find out that there's some losses here and a bit of issues, right? That you might experience in this particular section. Cool. Now, the next challenges that are currently being faced in this particular regard is the adoption, right? Is larger adoption rate. Currently, right now, LLM has made text to natural language to SQL very, very interesting in terms of the approach to it, in terms of in terms of the usage, but yet there's still a bit of an adoption. I mean, in terms of adopting this production wise, right? There are limits to this currently right now, and it's a bit of complex in terms of deploying this solution in house, right? There's a bit of complexity to this, and this is a bit of a challenge. All right. So the next section I'm just going to be going through, I'm going to be sharing the next screen. I'm going to be sharing my next screen. Okay, just a second. So you can see, yeah, we can run some demo sessions. Just let me know when you can see that screen. Cool. All right. So I believe, yeah, you can see my new screen. So in this particular section, I'm going to walk you through what you basically need to start with when building a natural language to SQL. But there's also something that's very important that you need to set up first. In this particular demo, I'm going to be using a tool called Vana, and let me share that on our screen so you can take a look at it. Just okay. Let me share the screen again. Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna move to okay, cool. Yeah. So one of the things that you need to do is you need to set up your account. Just come to Fana.ai and set up your account. You get some free tokens here that you can play with for this demo. And yeah, so basically this should help for this demo. Yeah. So I'm just gonna go back and share the next screen. Yeah, cool. Yeah, good. Yeah, so in this demo, we're going to take a look at, in terms of how we're going to query our database using natural language. I'm going to show you an approach you can do this. All right. For example, we have basic examples in terms of NLP queries. Like I said previously, you want to find out questions like you want to find out what are my total sales for the product for last month. You want to ask this in natural language. Ideally, you would tend to write a query for this. Either you are using joins or you are carrying out other extensive queries, Postgres or any other database in this regard. You might also want to find out things like which products generated more revenue, what percentage of customers are from each region. These are basic questions that you want to find out on your normal database. Cool. And yeah, other approaches you get to see in terms of text to SQL is um, you get to see things like, for example, text to image, which we are all familiar with, right? With what OpenAI is doing currently. It does text to image, text to video, and all of that. So, but this particular session, I'm just going to focus on text to query, which is basically what we're going to be focusing on. Yeah. So in building up our basic text to SQL system, you find out that we need so basically it falls in three categories. The first thing is you have your natural language, which is the first thing here. The next thing is the SQL generation, and finally you have the database query. I'm just going to share you a demo. This illustration, this is from AWS. You can find this image in the resource link so many slides. Okay, now in this part, this is more like a complex system in terms of what is happening in this in this architecture, right? Here you have your user inputs, writing, sending a query to the database, for example, who is the best performing staff in this region, maybe in North America, or perhaps in South America, for example, right? You want to create a database, right? And and what you have here is the Amazon Bedrock in this instance. Now, I'm just using this as an illustration. It's not entirely compulsory for you to use to deploy this service in AWS, right? And if you take a look at this architecture, what you have is you have the after the user generation, you can see what happens here. You can see your data sources here. This is your Postgres database. This is this is where you have your embeddings, and obviously you have the OpenSearch, which is quite similar to the Elasticsearch service for carrying out extensive search database. Um, and what you have here is it then feeds into the query, right? It meets the query. That's the query coming in from the user, like with my best performing staff for the month, or what my best performing product for the month, and there you have it interacting also with the LLM, right? You need to get your final output as a user, right? So this is just basically this is I would say this like a complex approach to solving this, but it's much illustrative, right? So let's move on. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think I've talked about this. That's a text to image generation. All right, cool. So in this particular demo, we're going to look at some few things. First of all, we'll look at setting up our environment, right? We'll look at model selection and where you get your model API key. Uh, I previously shared the screen where you can get your API key. That's if you click on this link and you go to Vana.ai, you can follow you can just sign up and get your API key there. And then we look at the database selection, and we look at the setup, look at the vector DB and training, and we'll just get to see how this works a bit. All right. Now, before I proceed, let me just show you an illustration. Um, okay, let me share this other screen just a sec. I'm going to share on my PG admin. So this is the sample database we're going to be using. Now, this is my PG admin, right? So I'm assuming that you want to carry out your own demo, or perhaps you want to deploy this in your business, in your company, on your team, right? So, for example, now I have my tables here. I have my company mailing list, as you can see. Let's just take a look at what this looks like. Okay, so wait for that to load up. Cool. So cool. So as you can see, this is basically a sample database. I have this. This is my company mailing list table, and you can see what is happening here. So I have these different tables, and if you recall, when I started up this conversation, I spoke about data selection, because basically the quality of the output determines on what is coming to the system, right? Here you do your, for example, here you do your table selection, or you do your column selection, depending on the kind of features you want to query. Um, on the system, right? And in this table, I have about five different columns. I have my ID, I have my first name, I have my location, I have my email, I have my created app, right? This is basically um, a company mailing list. Then I also have my product. Let's just take a look at this. Okay, let's take a look at the first rows. Okay, cool. So yeah. So as you can see, This is another table. As you can see, this is my product table. Here I just have my integer column, my product column, the manufacturer and creator. Now, ideally, if I want to query this, if I want to query this data, or if I want to query this database, I'm going to have to write SQL queries, right? I'm going to have to, for example, I want to run this, let me link by 100. I want to run, maybe I want to find out the minimum cost, the maximum cost. I'm going to have to write query for this. But what if I can just say, um, what is the what is the maximum, or what is the, what is the maximum, let's see, what's the highest manufacturing cost for this region, let's say for region XY. Yeah. So this is the goal, right? We want to be able to do something like this, right? That's basically the entirety of what we're doing here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to next other slide, the VS Code. All right, cool. So let's assume you've been able to set up your profile on Vana.ai. So basically, what we're doing here is that we're using a wrapper, right? Um, so there are two ways you could go about this. You could entirely write your application by yourself. You don't need a wrapper. You could design this application from entirety by yourself, or you could decide to plug into other wrappers who are currently utilizing OpenAI and other vector embedding solutions out there. All right, so what's happening here is I'm going to run this right now. Okay. Okay, cool. So yeah, I need to set up my environment. Now the next thing is I want to install Banner, right? Um, there's also something I want to also bring to your attention as well too. Now, ideally or preferably, it's best to run this on Google Colab, right? But as you can see, I'm running this on my VS Code, and there's a reason for that. For this, now this is because I have to connect to my local Postgres. If I have to do this with Google Colab, it's a bit of a process, right? I have to start tunneling and all of that process, which might end up taking a bit of a time. So I'm just going to do this on my local VS Code, and so that I can easily connect to my Postgres. Cool. So I'm going to run this. Going to run this next. Run this. Okay, cool. All right. So now this is run. Okay, cool. Yeah. Now the next thing you want to do is you want to be able to import these particular dependencies, right? Now, now on my approach, I'm using OpenAI via Vana.ai, right? And I'm also going to be using the vector store provided by Vana.ai. It makes it much easier for me for this particular demonstration. Now, now you might want to use you might want to use your own custom language model, right? And your custom vector store. I mean, that is basically up to you. You're free to you're free to do that. I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay. So I'm gonna wait for that to load. Cool. Now the next thing is you want to select your model. Now, once you once you sign into your Vena.ai profile, you are going to be able to see the text to SQL model that you can pick from, and you just basically need to run this. As you can see here, I'm passing my API key. Um, that's the my API from Banner.ai, my wrapper, and I've defined my model from here, from this variable, my Vena model name. I've been able to define my model, and I just need to pass my API key to define my VN function. Cool. All right. So, like I said, you want to look at what database do we want to query, right? We have the mailing list. We have our product. We have our sales. Like I showed you before, we have three tables in our database that we want to query. And yeah, so now the next thing I need to do right now is that I need to connect. I want to connect to my database, right? So that I can be able to train on that particular data. So I'm going to install this library, which is very essential for us to use. Cool. All right, so this library is installed already. I'm just going to put this. Yeah. I don't think I will need this. Yeah. Now this is a test database. So we're going to use this. Now what you can see is I want to check my database connection that I've been able to that I have a complete setup to my local Postgres, right? Now what you can see is I have my connection. I'm trying to establish my connection to my database. Here I've defined my database name, the user ID, the password, the host. This is just a sample illustration, and find my port here. And from what you can see here as well is I'm going to be able to define my query, right? I just want to test this to check out if my connection is successful. Good. So as you can see, right, I've been able to pinpoint that I have my let's check this out again. Let's say we want to this is for products. Let's see let me cross check table. Let's run this. Let's just check we have this installed. Good. So as you can see, this is the schema. This is my sales table in this particular section. Cool. Now the next thing I want to do is because I want to be sure that I want to combine multiple tables together for this particular system. You can also if you want to comment this code. Let's just try to do that now. So I'm just going to comment this. Cool. So this should. Okay, cool. So what is happening here is I'm trying to merge the three tables I have together and to see how the output is going to look like, right? So just to be sure that um, I'm not I mean I'm able to pass the three tables in my database together. Now, if you go back to our first illustration where I spoke about data selection, now that part is very essential in the sense that over time you want to go back and retrain your model, right? Because you based on the feedback, and you want to carry out different iterations on that particular model. Cool. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to connect to the Vanna with our database using this particular function. Now, I'm going to connect here. Cool. So as you can see, I've just defined my local host, my DB name. I've defined the user and all of that, and basically all of these. So it takes us to this next section, which we talked about. We talked about the training, right? Which I'm just going to illustrate. Now, this particular demo is a simple illustration. Now, for anyone to get started, using using a text as a natural language to SQL system, and there are a variety of other approaches you can use to get this done. Right. Something very essential in terms of training is using using this particular Vanna approach. There are three ways you can train. You can train, right? can train on your data. Um, as you can see, you can decide to use the data definition and language statements. For example, as you can see here, you have the vn.train. Here, I can create my table, um, define my define my columns, and define my columns and the constraint that I want to have in there. And the next thing you could also want to use is that you might also want to use a documentation string, right? Uh, this just gives it more context, gives your system more context. For example, just the same way you have your prompt when you're building a normal rack system, or you want to fine tune, you just want to give more context to your business domain. Alternatively, you could also write out the SQL statements. For example, um, as you can see here, using the select statement, you can select the particular columns that you want to use to train in your that you want to use to train for the particular for the model, right? Right. Cool. Then the next thing also you might also want to use is you want to use the question SQL pairs rather. Um, and for example, this a bit to is more context, right? In terms of you can define a question like, for example, what is the average age of customers, and you pass in your SQL your SQL statement. Yeah, so these particular approaches are different ways you can use to train your system. I can see some questions coming in. Okay, I think I'll be sure to answer once. Cool. All right. Yeah, so I'll be sure to share my notebook after the session. Now, the next thing we want to talk about is you want to look at your training plan, right? In terms of how do I train my data, right? You train my data you're training your data on your model. Now, the Vanna model uses the RAG system. And in this particular context, what is happening right now is that we are training, we're trying to let the language model, for example, the GPT model, understand the business context, right? Understand that, oh, I'm passing a table that has a sales data that has these attributes, right? So that way I'm able to get the results I want. Now, you're going to see that I can see someone ask a question regarding hallucination and all of that, right? You're going to see that the system is not entirely perfect. You're going to see that there's a bit of of a question mark, right? In the output, and this way, what happens is that you go back and you try to see how you can add more data, and we train on that particular stage. Cool. So as you can see, what is happening here is um, I'm trying to fetch my columns, my tables, my columns. As you can see in this place, I'm selecting my public, I'm selecting the product, in my particular data, right? So let me just run this section here. Yeah, so regarding the question on hallucinations, now one of the things you could also do is that one of the things you could do is doing your model selection rather than you could modify you could modify the class, right? And that's a class that defines the Vanna model, right? If you check out the documentation on Vanna, you can see that as well. You can try to modify it just to suit your context, right? In terms of setting the temperature and all of that. Reducing the hallucination effect on your output. Cool. So let's just go on. As you can see, as you can see what's happening here. So here I'm going to run my training plan here. So it might take a while, but it's gonna run. Let's just hold on for it to run. Yeah, so I can see someone. Okay, yeah, yeah. So setting up how that, yeah, you could use any ORM. I mean, there are a variety of them: MySQL, um, and PostgreSQL, and Oracle. I mean, there are a number of them out there, right? And it's not limited to Postgres, right? Uh, yeah. So this is the setting up. Okay, cool. So yeah, so it's not we're not constrained to Postgres database. There are a variety of them you could also use for your in terms of depending on your level of knowledge, right? In terms of operating those particular Postgres databases. So why this is still training, we're just going to wait a while. It's going to train. It's going to train a while. I hope I've been able to answer the question regarding the high rate of hallucinations. And one of the things that you could do in that given scenario is you can modify the class, right? And in terms of you can give it more context, and also yeah so in terms of driving out in terms of improving the output of the model, one of the things you need to be very watchful is a feedback, the feedback loop, right? You need to in terms of you need to carry out series of iterations in terms of because the first result you would get or you might get might not be exactly what you're looking out for, right? You might train on a particular sales data and you're not getting the outputs that you need, right? So you just basically need to add more data. I'm going to show you how you can add more data if you're using this particular scenario. You can add more data and train, retrain the model, right? And basically, what is happening in this particular system with RAG is that we're just trying to let the model understand, hey, this is my data, this is what my business is, right? I want you to I want you to build your knowledge base, factoring what I have on my local content. That's what basically that's what RAG that's how RAG basically works, right? Okay. So while waiting for this to train, it's going to be true in a bit. Yeah, I'll be sharing the notebook so we can get to take a look at this. I'm going to share the notebook. Yeah, so yeah, I can see there's a question on conversation memory, right? Um, yeah. So what you could do is you could in this regard, you need to build custom, you need to define it, right? You could build a custom application that stores the memory, that's the previous messages in the system, right? I think recently, right now, OpenAI just updated this their own with the GPT 2.5 and GPT 4 systems with ChatGPT, right? In terms of memory, and this is something you could do if you're building a custom application. So this is something you could factor in, right? Depending on your system architecture. Okay, yeah, yeah, cool. So the next thing that's going to happen here is now I've been able to carry out my first train, right? But you will see that it's not going to give me entirely what I'm looking at for. So let's run this. Let's run this. Good. Now, okay, okay, okay. So yeah, now this is us trying to get out the training data, right? We want to understand what exactly. Let me do. Oh, let's see what's happening here. Okay. All right. When we get to this point, this is the point that we need to go back and say, hey, I don't like the output I'm seeing. in terms of the question, because right now I can see there are no questions in the question column. I can't really find any questions here. So I'm going to want to run this again myself, right? For example, let me comment this out. Let's run this one first and see what's going to look like. Now, what you can also see is I'm also passing the plan here. Now, this plan was defined. This plan variable was defined here based on the data in our system, right? So I'm gonna run this again. Let me run this. Yeah. Okay. Good. So that was a bit fast. So I've added more context. Let me see what's happening here. Okay. Now let's try to have this. Okay, now the next thing we should do is let's try to see how the system is going to react to. So let's try to, for example, uh, let's try to ask a random question. Okay, let me do this. Let me run this. Let's run this particular. So I'm going to go to this particular section to that local host. Just it. I don't know if you can see that screen now. I'm not sure what screen you can see. Okay, cool. Cool. So let's check out this. Yeah, I'm going to localhost. Yeah, can, yeah. Now, yeah, I can gain access to my training data, the data you've used to train. And as you can see, I don't like the way this is trained in terms of all of this, right? So, for example, if I'm going to ask a question, I'm not going to get anything. Let's just ask a question like, what is the highest, or let's use product as the highest one should be cost. So let's see. Oh, okay, interesting. Let me check this again. Let's check our data. Oh, interesting. Okay, good. I can see we have let's, okay. Now the beauty of Vanna is the fact that you can always check out the questions, in terms of the um, in terms of the queries, right? You can check out the questions in the model. Okay, so let's move to my question. Okay, I just asked a particular question. Can see that question. Yes, let's ask it. So I can see which products was manufacturing. Because another thing you need to consider is the fact that I've previously trained I previously trained my data, right? And so that also is gonna be considered when returning some results. Right, right. I mean, right. So, I mean, you can see the beauty, right? Um, in terms of which product has the highest manufacturing cost. So now let's assume we're going to run this query by ourselves, right? In the database. So let's move on to our database. Just I'm going to share that screen now. Cool. Now, this is my product. Now, this is the product table, and this is the manufacturing cost for a variety of different products, as you can see here. So let's say I will continue. Let's just say I want to run this. I want to limit by one. That's the first. So you can see that I'm able to recreate the same queries, the data queries in my Postgres database. But this time around, the difference between this approach and the other approach is that the first approach is that I'm able to use natural language, right? Now, the beauty of deploying text to SQL or text to SQL via LLM. Now, the beauty of this is that this can be used for various teams and various departments that are not tech savvy, and you can deploy this to the product end users depending on the data consumer or whoever is going to consume that data or the key or the stakeholder, right? And you can even deploy this via maybe a chatbot service or via perhaps a search service in the company. So there are a variety of ways in which our approaches that you can utilize this particular system in the business. Okay. Now let's run another one. Let's say okay. So let's clear this. Okay, let me go back to the previous slide before we wrap up. Cool. So let's see what question can we ask. So let me ask a new question. So let me look at my data. Um, let me look at the data in terms of what we have. Okay, let's ask a random question. Let's say what. No. Okay. Now what you can see here is that it needs more. It needs a bit of more context, right? And so now, and as someone previously asked a question regarding hallucination, um, and now this is something that you can factor when designing your particular architecture, your RAG architecture, or if you are using wrappers like Vana.ai, right? Or if you want to use an open source version of this, I mean, all well and good. And so you can define prompts and you can define your system such that when a question is being asked, when a question is being asked that the model is not unaware of, right? It should return an answer like I don't know, have no idea, and all of that, right? So it needs more context to reply. So let's just say what's the list of forming products. Let's see. This is enough. Good. Okay. Uh, so what's happening right now is returning the product ID for me from sales, uh, yeah, but as you can see, we want more than this, right? So what happens is when you get this kind of output, you want to go back to your you want to go back in terms of iterations, running out iterations in terms of how can I improve my I can I perhaps I may want to ingest more data, or in terms of I'm not providing more context for the system. As you can see right now, yeah, we want to get results more beyond the product ID. We want to get results regarding sales, right? And right now, it's not giving us enough. It's just giving us the product ID, which is limited. So I'm going to say no. And yeah, when I say no, I can decide to run my own queries on this, but that's beyond our scope here. So what we have, let's see. Let's go back to our data just to get more. Let me run to our data, the table, and see what other questions we could throw. Let's just a minute. You can see we have um Okay. We don't have much context here. So let's just say much on sales. So perhaps low sales or low. Okay, it's insufficient. Let's run this. I know we have to go back and retrain our model, but let's just run this. See what product which has a high manufacturing cost. So high manufacturing cost. You can see let's see if we get any context here. Oh, interesting. Okay, let's run something else. Now, what happens is when you get to this particular scenario of this particular stage, you go back to your. Let me go back to the screen. Um, you go back to your um, you come back here. Okay. I hope you can see this screen. So I'm going to, for example, let me comment this. And comment this. I want to. I want to see. Let's see if we can get more. We can get more content before we wrap up the meeting. Okay. I think there's some questions. Yeah. You could actually you could ask some computational questions actually because that is the goal, right? In terms of you want to ask in terms of natural language like um, hi uh, in, this particular region had this low turnout for Q1 2024 and trying to see how we can should we continue this product in Q2 or Q3. So but that would depend on the system actually, right? Depending on how you build up your own system in terms of what you want, right? So let's just run this again, and we keep iterating until we get what we want, right? Cool. Let's just run this. Come here. Um, no, okay, this is the demo. Now let's just check this out. Okay, no, stop this. Just a minute. Let me stop this. Blocking my screen. Right. Okay. Let me share the other screen. Yeah. So pretty much, um, as the, let's see how you can see the screen. So why that is coming up? Let me go back here and I've been able to stop this. I want to run this line of code again. Okay, no, what's going on here? Okay, uh, yeah, you can see what's happening here. So let's say I want to train on let me read this. Yeah, so I want to run this again. Good, good. Um, Let me run that again, and yeah, I want to run this. I'm gonna go back to this share. So, okay, now this is the previous question we asked it. We asked it what product has the least manufacturing cost, and you can see it brings out the product here that that the crush grape has the least manufacturing cost. Let's say $108.71, right? Yeah. So pretty much it. Yeah. So thank you for coming to this session, and let me just refresh this. Cool. Yeah, and you get to see how the questions you've asked you've asked the system before gets out, it gets played out again. So yeah, so pretty much, and this, basically you can do this and you can run this and more and and more and more and more in this particular particular demonstration. All right, because of time constraint, I think we might have to just stop here. Right, thank you for coming to this short session. Yeah. Uh, yeah, you're welcome. You can send me questions. Yeah, hi Murad.
Hello,
Yeah, hi Murad.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So, let's see. So there is you answer some questions here. Good. So no more questions. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for our audience participation. It's a great to show the RAG model here and connection with the SQL. So it's so useful, especially nowadays. You can do a lot of projects with it. Thank you for your time and presentation. We'll have this on the YouTube. Yeah, if you have any questions, you can just send us email. We can forward that to Tolulay. Hope to see you in our in-person and online events.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.